Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining our weekly live stream to discuss things related to digital transformation. Today, we are here to talk about redesigning supply chains with people and processes and technology. So we're going to talk about supply chain management, but even if you're not interested in supply chain management, you're interested in general change and transformation in general, we'll talk about the people, process, and technology aspects of supply chain management from that context. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And joining me today is a world-renowned panel of experts here, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a moment. I like to overhype it and oversell them to make them set the bar really high. But this is actually a panel of some of the speakers that are going to be at our Digital Stratosphere event, which is coming up in late August. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that here in just a moment. But we wanted to use this as an opportunity to get together some of the people that will be speaking at that conference, just to give you a preview of the types of knowledge and personalities you can expect from the conference. And even if you're not planning to attend the conference, we hope this adds a lot of value to your day and to your discussion. A couple logistical things. We encourage you to ask any questions you have. So we're going to be checking the chat along the way. We're streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and TikTok. So wherever you're listening or watching today, thank you for being here. Please drop in the chat any questions you have along the way. And I'd love to hear your comments in the chat here as we're getting started. What city and country you're joining from here today? I'd love to hear where the international community is joining from today. And actually, right before we went live, we also had another point of debate that we thought we could open up. Maybe we open it up here and ask the audience the question you had, Will, which is which era of music is better, post 2000s or the 1980s? Love to hear your thoughts. Love to hear your thoughts in the chat here, even though it has nothing to do with supply chain management. It's a fun way to start the day here for those of you that are just getting started. So thanks for being here today. So love to hear from you today. We're going to talk about supply chain management, the people, process, and technology aspects of it. I'm just going to go around here real quickly and do introductions, starting with you, Emma.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I fall into the camp of liking music from both sides, but based off of age, I grew up and was born and bred to listen to the 2000s and specifically crappy rap. So I've got a lot of those lyrics in my mind, if anybody was curious. But I focus more on the people side of technology, like Eric mentioned. I come from a background of over a decade of enterprise technology sales. And during that time, I realized I can bring in the shiny objects all I want, but if I don't have the buy-in from the people side, chances are the project's not going to be as successful as I'm saying it's going to be. And so I started to look at things from a different angle and kind of became obsessed. And so I'm going to be kind of adding in some of that color commentary on how to bring the technology and the people together.
Great. Great to have you here again, and look forward to seeing you in Denver Stratosphere next month. Also joining is Will, the distribution guy, Quinn. Thanks for joining
us. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Eric. Yeah, I am Will Quinn. I am the distribution guy. If anybody else tries to say it, they're lying because I had that trademarked. So I've spent my entire career in supply chain and logistics. I started out in the Marine Corps in supply chain. I have worked for companies like Coca-Cola, Grainger, MSC Industrial Supply, running DCs, managing inventory, trying to make things happen and go out the door. I spent 4 years at a software company called Infor. It gave me the technical aspect, how all the different software managers and that sort of thing, gave it a different perspective. Now I run a consulting company, do warehouse consulting, and do a lot of writing. Happy to be here, Eric.
Yeah, great to have you here. And another. So we got one vote for the 2000s, one for the 80s. The audience is already chiming in here. So far, there's a clear favorite, but we'll get to that in a second.
Lots of the 80s. Another vote from the 80s here.
Eric, it's your demographic. You love 80s music. It's your stream. Clearly, you're going to have outweighed the options here.
I know if they're, we always pride ourselves on being objective and agnostic and independent and all this stuff. But I do have a very strong bias for 1980s music, I'll be honest. So guilty as charged. So Casey Jenkins, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, so I will say that my vote's probably more for the 2000s because of my age demographic, but don't get me wrong, some of the 80s music, it can definitely be kind of hype sometimes, just to kind of take you back a little bit. But yeah, so I'm Casey Jenkins. I'm the owner of 828 Consulting. We focus on small business consulting, basically process improvement within, supply chain processes of those types of organizations. I've done everything within supply chain, from freight brokerage to international supply chain management. I also teach supply chain at multiple universities and project management as well. So definitely bringing that more process perspective, I would say, into the conversation.
Great. Well, great to have you here. And this will be your first time at Stratosphere, right? So this will be your first time joining. You've been on my podcast a couple times before, but never at Stratosphere. So look forward to seeing you there.
Yep.
So we've got 2 votes for the 2000s, 1 for the 80s. That seems to be the main thing most people are concerned about. We should probably just turn this whole episode into a music thing, because no one's asking any supply chain related questions yet, but I'm sure we'll get to it. Okay. So Jan Bond, you're joining us again at Stratosphere. You were there last year. You had a great presentation. Funny story, though, real quickly before you introduce yourself. Of all the speakers, no offense to any of the other speakers, I was the most excited to see your session. But during the session, there was a fire drill in the middle of his presentation, and what was funny is he just kept going, and so the alarm went off, and it was clear it was not going to stop. And then he just powered through, and he just kept rolling, and some people couldn't hear, and he be damned, he just was going to keep going. So it was actually a really good presentation. So I'm looking forward to seeing you speak again, hopefully without a fire alarm going off in the middle of your presentation this time.
But sometimes, Eric, constraints can be even an opportunity. It's always good to see that. I'm, 47 years of entrepreneurial history in, I should say, real the focus is aligning business and IT. And I came out of the mother of all complexity called ERP. In 82, we had already a Unix-based ERP solution who was real differentiating. We were able to win the biggest deal ever in the 70s, in last century, was from the Boeing deal, winning it from SAP and Oracle. And 20 years in ERP, I came to the conclusion, and maybe a little too early, but I found it was obsolete, because it's now part of Infor, but ERP was built without a browser. And it means even we see today, ERP have nothing to do with native internet. It's nothing to do, ERP does not understand supply chain. It's a big castle, it's totally isolated. But we cannot do supply chain without ERP. And therefore I start again after 20 years in BPM. And we built, say, these transactional systems, bring them together with even case management driven systems, and focus on business process. But it was too early. That was in the infancy of the internet. Spent the 15 years over there. And again, for the third time, we moved again to what we see moving from we see platform as a service, who's the infancy of the internet. We move now to real infrastructure as a service. Therefore, you take everything outside from one of the big three. I've chosen Google. We go extremely deep in Google, and we are focusing on agentic-driven microservices. But then adopting that with a real, what we see, decoupling ERP. That means I take all the ERP data immediately in a BigQuery. I decouple ERP, it's too complicated, and the kids from Google do not know ERP. And how to go to the supply chain means that all the data should be linked together. That means you move from transactional data to metadata, but it's not enough. We are now in semantic data. And in the semantic data, we can take every customer, like Google's customer data platform, even together in agentic AI. It's driven by agents, but the agents could be stupid. The agent is a butler, and the butler should report for a human. And we bring the wisdom to the human. And it means if we do good in the supply chain, then you can triple your EBITDA. Even supply chain today is old-fashioned, because what we do in supply chain, we can ship everything in a day, but it's already a half a year in a box. And that's also, we are so obsolete in what we're doing. And therefore, I even focus a little on the people is the core element. And the real element is how can we take all the data from different technology waves together, unite them, and bring them in an agentic AI-driven environment.
Right. Yeah, it's very fascinating because for those that don't know, I know you're very humble, Jan, but you did pioneer largely pioneered the whole category of ERP software back starting in the 70s. And I find it super interesting that you are now one of the ones leading the charge to create an alternative to ERP that may actually end up destroying the category that you helped create. So it's that creative destruction, that innovator's dilemma, Clayton Christensen sort of angle that I know you're a big Clayton Christensen fan as well. But I find that super interesting to see that in real life, how you've evolved and stayed ahead of the curve all these years. So just real quickly, turning to the audience, I appreciate the introductions. I appreciate you all being here today, both the panelists and the audience here today. Want to say hello to the audience here. Darian's joining from LinkedIn, says good morning. Chris joining from the UK. Thank you for being here today. Chris is a 1980s fan. So the joke's on you, Emma and Casey. So far, people are loving the 80s. Mike from LinkedIn says 1980s. Chris says 1980s for sure. Halil says hi from Turkey. Daniel's joining on LinkedIn from LinkedIn, says Melbourne, Australia, 1980s. Now I'm feeling self-conscious though, Emma, because I'm feeling like you're right. It's all just middle-aged dudes like me.
I was just going to say, just wait. The joke is going to be on you. I'm going to talk to your team and like sneak some like 2000s music into the like walk-on songs at Stratosphere or something.
That's
I'll
right.
like start a coup from within.
Like Backstreet Boys or Britney Spears or something like that.
Hey, Backstreet Boys are making a comeback at the Sphere right now. So
I will never admit this again out loud, but I do like the Backstreet Boys. Some of their songs, anytime I hear one of their songs, I like just can't get it out of my head. It's just so catchy. Drew, late 90s, early 2000s. So Drew's contrarian. I like it on LinkedIn. Darian says 2000s. Of course she does. If you knew how old she was, you'd understand that why she'd say that. Drew on LinkedIn says makes it memorable. I think he's referring to your Stratosphere session, Jan. And then Darian says it was iconic, Jan, regarding to your presentation. And then Elizabeth, finally, someone bailing me out here. Elizabeth on LinkedIn says best era, the 1980s. So thank you for your support there. And if I haven't made it clear already, my vote is for the 1980s as well. In fact, if you could see my wall right here, I have all music stuff related to the 80s. And Drew just pointed out that it's now on the internet forever. So we are going to edit that out. It'll get bleeped out. Don't worry, Drew. That will never be a trace of me admitting to liking the Backstreet Boys anywhere ever again. Okay, then one last thing, Darren. Oh, this is you.
I'm starting the coup.
Oh, I didn't know this was you, Em. Actually, I thought it was Darian writing this, but you're tagging Darian, said I want it that way ready as Eric goes on stage. It's funny because that's the one song that I like the most of theirs, and it's the one that gets stuck in my head the most. And again, that will get edited out and bleeped. It'll never be on the internet again. Okay, so enough about the 80s, at least for now. Just getting into the supply chain stuff, though. I want to talk a little bit about supply chain transformations in general. And again, this isn't just about supply chain management. I mean, this question actually applies to any sort of change initiative. But I want to start with you on this one, Casey, as it relates to when you look at supply chain management and some of the work you do for your clients, why, or first of all, is it true? And if it is, why is this? Is it true that that the people and process side is more important or even more important than the technology side? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I feel like it kind of depends on what side of the coin you're on, right? Like when you're an organization, obviously I think the people and process side is definitely more important. When you're a tech company, obviously your tech's more important, right? But I do think from a supply chain or overall business operations standpoint, technology is just a tool, right? It's supposed to enhance the processes or enhance the ability for, your resources to actually execute their day-to-day tasks. And so I would say that the people and process side should be the starting point before you start to layer in the technology on top. And part of the reason I say that is because a lot of times you realize that what you think is actually the problem within your organization that a technology solution can solve isn't actually the problem when you start diving into what your people are saying or what your processes actually look like. Technology, I would say, is a tool and an enabler and not necessarily like the end all be all solution or finality to, different business operations.
Yeah, makes total sense. How about you, Emma? You've carved out quite the niche of being the people first advocate in the marketplace. Why are people? And so I know what your answer is as far as whether or not you think people is more important than technology. But why is that? Tell us why you're so passionate about the people side of change.
Well, so like I said in the introduction, while I was selling technology, I had the same solution that was situated at the top of the Magic Quadrant, no matter what customer we were putting it in. I had the same team that was implementing the technology. And the biggest variable was, and again, we were a process consulting company too. So we're going to take process out of that because the team that was implementing it would start with process and then bring the technology in.
Sure.
With all of those variables the same, we still had varying success of where we actually got the ROI that the customer was looking for, whether or not we solved the problems that they came to us with at the beginning of the conversation. And typically it came down to the adoption of the solution on the team side and how ready they were for change, what the culture looked like internally, and all of these things that surround the idea of the people side. And so yes, technology matters. You don't want to go buy a garbage solution and try to bring it into your company because that's not going to do anything for you. And I was spoiled. I had process consultants that would sit down and help us move through that process before we ever brought in the technology. But in my mind, the old adage of people, process, technology has an order of operations. And if you don't start with that first part of it with a culture that provides psychological safety so that people actually give you their real feedback about what's going on, and you don't start by helping educate people on how to use the technology or spot opportunities within your process to automate and all of these other things that start in that first category before you move on to process and then bring in the technology, you aren't ever going to get to the crest of the mountain the same way without that adoption from your people. And so it's not that I don't like technology. It's not that I don't think it's valuable or that it's not an important part of the equation. But I feel like what I see oftentimes is that people say, and especially like we could go into like the AI side, there's so many companies that are chasing the shiny or chasing this like easy button that they think is going to come with AI, and they start on that end, and then the people end up being this like last thought, and usually it's a thought of, people hate change, why are they making this so difficult? But really it's a leadership problem because they never addressed the front of the equation as they were going through it in the way that they were supposed to.
Yeah that makes total sense. And Will, what about you? I mean, you sort of straddled the operational side of things, the technology side of things, and certainly the people side of things. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Sure. It was always my experience that, typically the problem wasn't technology. I always found that whatever system the company had, was an ERP or WMS, typically it was far more robust than the average user knew how to use it, right? And typically how you get into that situation is you implement a new solution, everybody's excited, people are trained how to use it, you've got super users, people are dialed in, and then over time people get promoted, they move on to other companies, new people come in, and there's not that effort of retraining. There's not money set aside to properly train the new people that have come over. So now Mary's learning from Susie, who learned from John, or learned from Juan, and now all of a sudden we have a terrible system that nobody's knows how to use. And it's usually not, unless you have right now, you're using a green screen AS400, probably maybe what you have, it might be good enough. But, going on the tech side, even in a software company, developing that technology, the different groups that work within, it's people. It's really people heavily focused. So if you're not managing the people, if you're not getting the right people together to make the right decisions to help forward that technology, it's not going to get better either. So you can't emphasize enough the importance of people, change management, and making sure that everybody truly understands what's happening and the why.
Yeah, and those are great points, and you all bring up good points about how technology for technology's sake doesn't do you any good if the people aren't coming along, and if your operations aren't coming along. Jan, what about from your perspective? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts here, because you're the technologist in you, the visionary in you that has created some of these products that have been on the forefront of innovation and changes to the space. I imagine you think of a lot of problem solving from a technology perspective, but how do you balance out in your mind when you're creating these products and the visions for these companies you've built? How do you address the people and process side of things against the technology?
Technology always should be hidden. If you look to top technology, it's maybe an airplane, maybe not even, it's a car. And if you see in a car, everything is commoditized and everything is decoupled. But in IT, we are stupid people. We are young. We do not understand advanced stuff. We do everything handicraft. We deal still with database. If you look to an SAP system and if you look to an Oracle system, it's still technology from a century ago. And that's the problem. We make it difficult. Technology should always be part of the business. And now we're coming in commoditizing real technology. Even in AI. What is AI? Nothing on its own. AI should only be a component in a workflow. And what we do too much, we expect that whole IT is important, but the upstream is too complicated even for AI, etc. ERP still. The value is even downstream with the supply chain. And therefore, you should decouple it and go back only downstream. And if you see an ERP system, who cares for technology? You do complex elements, like in master work scheduling. Only a few people understand it. And people are saying ERP, only 10% of ERP understand the complexity of master work scheduling and all the stuff therein. And everyone talk it even ERP. But what is important then, you do it once a week, 2 times a week, and then you need one version of the truth. And then even if it's 3 days old, doesn't matter. But on downstream, you talk in milliseconds, and you have totally other elements. It's what we see is the real time on the one hand, and we see the data element on the other end. And if you are mature, you have a bill of material and you decouple it. And what we always did is hiding technology from the user. And in tomorrow's world, the CIOs will have a problem because tomorrow they will report to the COO. Only business cares. And only if you are good, maybe in data, you can report to the CEO if you are a data specialist in this AI stuff therein. But all the other elements, even what we take from the the infrastructure as a service, where everything in DevOps and everything is there united. That is then hidden like in a car under the hood. And therefore we should become manufacturers. And we are handicraft people. 90% in IT is handmade. We program, we handmade it, and then we sell it, we overpromise it. We cannot support it, we have no traceability. We have now what we see in high tech or in really cars or so is predicted maintenance. Now, I'm believing what we built all the time was a software factory. And a software factory is built of material. We built it on an SBOM, a software bill of material. I'm now in this moment generating 80% of all the code immediately in plain Java. Low code, I don't like it because in low code, you can't do the last mile. And therefore, you should do high code. That means generating it. And on the latest moment, then you take the human who can do the last mile, but still should not be vendor lock-in. Now, I hate vendor lock-in, although everyone was locked in my barn time. But in today's world, everything should be open, should be decoupled. That means complex elements in technology under the hood of a car is decoupled. Therefore, an ERP system can be decoupled and you change it maybe only once in a half a year or so. It's good enough. But you bring it where you change it every minute to microservices. Now, and what you see in technology is all the time, it's like in a car, you have 3 technology waves. If you have a Tesla car, every 5 seconds, maybe a car is born. But there is still mechanical stuff. There's still electrical and it's still software. In IT, you deal with 3 elements. You deal with silos, even today, which SQL, believe it or not, 90% is SQL data. It's stupid, not even big data. Now, that means you have then silos. Then we're moving to business processes. It's too complicated. And we do it more the inbound of the enterprise, but it's nothing to do with supply chain. Nothing. It's too complicated. Then we go a step further, what we call workflow. Now, and these 3 layers should be decoupled and all with the same data model in the semantic data and the workflow. And the workflow is now amazing, can be done with the Kubernetes type of stuff. You can do 100 times more, 100 times faster, but all this old stuff is still there. No, and what you should do then is combine them, decouple it, and then you give it in the hands of the job to be done, what Clayton Chris has mentioned. And there, the EBITDA is 10 times more.
Right.
The EBITDA is downstream.
Right.
And the more downstream, the more value. And the more downstream you win the tender, and you give it in hands of the business. Therefore, it should be owned by the business, always. And what we do now, from the first moment, we can create everything already with the business owner. And we have all this UX stuff already to bring it. We can decouple data model and show it already there. Now, and these tools totally will differentiate. And therefore, ERP, what I agree with you, Eric, it will be anywhere, it's obsolete. It is totally obsolete, but we cannot stop it. We need it for the next 5 years still a little to adopt it.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the ERP vendors that once were relying heavily on lock, they're still trying to get that vendor lock, but I think they're even seeing cracks in the foundation of that model as the world becomes more open, more flexible, more nimble.
And if you deal today with 100,000 database tables, now in my band time, I had still 10,000 database, 100,000 database, and all they are there. And all they are in one big data element, we call it an SQL database. Now, it's older than I am in business. That means the most stupid stuff we do. No. And at the other end, we have the most modern stuff, what we see with customer data platforms, with all this AI stuff. And then you have to decouple it.
Right.
And bring it together.
Right. Absolutely. Good points here. And I want to say hello to a couple people here that are commenting on social media. Elizabeth on LinkedIn says, totally agree, people and culture. AI is great once things are established, but AI does not have empathy, which is a really good point. I think it's easy to automate a lot of stuff with AI, but the people side of it, so far, we haven't figured out how to automate that piece. I don't know if we ever will. And then Precious from Ghana is joining us on LinkedIn. Thank you for being here today. Chris has a good point on LinkedIn. Chris says updated process guides are important, which users can use with no loss of knowledge. And I think that's a good point as far as getting that tribal knowledge documented and creating sort of a central repository of how your operations work. That's important.
Yeah, but in my opinion, process is not enough. Process was the old world. And in ERP, it's never process, it's a silo. And in process, you bring transactional data together with case management data, but you do it more in the inbound part of the enterprise. And now we go to the outbound, to the supply chain, and then you collaborate. And in this world of collaboration, you need semantic data, you need workflow. And therefore, you should combine these silos, these processes, but downstream, you go real to the most modern stuff, and everything is mobility and all the other elements there.
Right. Good point. So one other thing I want to make sure the audience is aware of too, I've mentioned that these are some of the speakers that are going to be at our Stratosphere conference coming up in late August. I'm going to put up a QR code right above, right at the top left side of your screen here. You can also go to stratosphere2025.com to see the speaker lineup and just to learn more about the event. But it's going to be August 27th through the 29th. It's a hybrid event, so you can join in person in Denver, Colorado, or you can join virtually online. Great lineup of speakers and sponsors, and it's a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys can make it. I'll leave that QR code up here for a few minutes, and you can use the discount code EarlyBird, and you'll get 20% off your registration. So stratosphere2025.com. The code is EarlyBird for 20% off, and I'll leave that up here. So Will, I want to ask you a question, a follow-up here as it relates to some of the pitfalls and risks that you see in supply chain transformations, whether it's an automation project or a warehouse redesign, whatever the change might be. What are some of the biggest pitfalls that you've seen organizations fall into when they're going through those sorts of changes?
Sure. I think it's not having a clear strategy, clear digital strategy that matches the business strategy, right? I think artificial intelligence and machine learning is super important. I think everybody should start something. But, going and buying something because, this is a great salesperson, or it shouldn't be a point of disruption. Like, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to get some diapers. While I'm here, let me grab a case of beer. you go to a conference and like, oh, I'm walking around like, oh, all these great vendors. Oh, let me have one of those. It's so I think starting is important, but being thoughtful about it, taking a step back and saying, okay, what's the one KPI that we've really been struggling with? Is there a solution for that? And then being very meaningful about that. I think there was some other discussion about, shiny objects and shiny toys and just picking that. But again, not having a clear strategy that matches is this solution going to impact my bottom line? Is it going to make my operation better? Is it going to make my people better at doing their jobs? Am I going to increase my throughput and be better able to serve my customers? So that's where I see a big downfall is just in the start. And then the other thing is folks in distribution, manufacturing tend to be go-getters. So you want to just jump right in and get to work, and you forget the planning phase. I mean, you make a great analogy in your book, which is right on the table behind you. You don't want to build the house without having plans. You don't say, oh, my first call is to the plumber. Yeah, I want to build this house. Come on out and put the pipes in, right? There's a step in a process. And as leaders that are go-getters, you tend to just want to get right in there, and it can cause you. It takes time in the front end, but it's going to pay dividends in the back end.
So to build on your analogy, it's like saying, I want to drink a case of beer before I change my baby's diaper. Is that? But you have a clear vision. You're very deliberate about it. You're not just having an impulse purchase of beer. You're actually having a plan that. That is a good point, though. Kidding aside, that having that strategy and that clarity of what it is you want and what you're trying to accomplish, I think is super important, especially as you have people like Jan and other technologists that are out there building such advanced, great tools. None of that matters if it doesn't fit your strategy. So I think that's super important. What are your thoughts, Emma? Some of the biggest obstacles and pitfalls that organizations face when they go through supply chain or any other sort of change?
I think kind of double tapping on that idea of the vision, more often than not. And so Eric, you and I met through TikTok, so you know that I create a lot of content there. And I love the feedback that I get from TikTok, probably more, LinkedIn, than what I get on LinkedIn, because people are not attached to their company when they're sharing their viewpoints, and they will share what's actually happening and tell you kind of their feelings. And the idea of a vision seems to be the biggest missing component in most companies tied to like any sort of transformation effort, that we are grasping for straws to try and keep up. Companies are terrified that they're going to be left behind, and that like FOMO that they get from not being able to keep up in their mind is what makes them make really quick, short-sighted decisions and create a mess of like spaghetti for themselves to try and like weed their way out of when they start to realize that they've created a problem. And the amount of times that I hear from people that they are burnt out from change fatigue because their company is constantly switching processes, constantly implementing new technology, shifting direction as an organization as a whole on a regular basis to chase whatever kind of thing they think they need to go after because they're afraid. Those are the things that are stressing out teams. Those are the things that are creating trust gaps with leadership. And those are the things that are creating a bunch of systems that aren't talking, that are creating data silos. Like all of these problems that we've been talking about the entire time that I've been in the technology space seem to only be compounding the more that leaders make short-sighted decisions to go and do something out of fear, as opposed to having like a strong vision of like, this is where we're taking the company. This is why we're taking the company in that direction. This is what we need from you as our employees. And this is what we need to do as a team to redesign our processes and bring in the right technology to enable those things. And when you don't start at that point, all of these other things that we will have talked about and other things that we could bring up in terms of the common challenges that we see, it all comes back to those foundational ideas that for some reason we just decide not to listen to. And I think a lot of it comes down to that fear of missing out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Eric,
we saw it with cloud, and we definitely see it with AI as
Will's
well.
ready. He's got something.
Yeah, we go ahead, Will.
Kate, before you move on, speaking of TikTok, what's a really interesting trend we're seeing on TikTok now is folks in their 20s discovering 80s music and just being blown away.
I know. I love how you brought it back. You're bringing it full circle, Will, back to the 80s. I like it.
If we talk over this technology, is it fair what we see today? Technology is so overvalued. We have only magnificent seven companies with $17,000 billion of market cap. And in reality, they do nothing for business. They're only making tools. And these poor manufacturing companies, they're only making 1 times revenue market cap. Now, in tomorrow's world, I hope that instead of 7 companies who deal with 17,000 billions of market cap, that we have 17,000 unicorns in manufacturing. The money, and what is now the most dangerous part we do, all those vendors are locked in. They locked us in. And they're saying, come to me with AI. That's the most dangerous stuff you can do. If you go to Salesforce or to Oracle with AI, they even lock you in their old stuff. AI should always belong to the company and never to the vendor. And this is the most, we are misleading tremendous. And why is it that they're spending, because these 7 have 17,000 billions, why should they not spend many billions for AI to do it in their locked-in version? We are totally misleaded. And some people are saying the mafia is less corrupt than some other ones. They cannot make 90% gross margins, what this IT company sometimes can do. And therefore, be aware that AI always should belong in the downstream latest point for the job to be done. And always decouple this one. And always take care that it's not locked in. If AI is built in a locked-in version, you go deeper and deeper. Now, and that's we see today, if you go from ECC to HANA, etc., you go even deeper in. And change nothing in the old. Take it only vanilla. Take all your customization immediately in microservices. It's simple and there is value in the customization is bespoke. It's your own EBITDA elements, and it is simple. Otherwise, it was already in vanilla. Then you are decoupled. It's quite simple. And then ERP can say another 5 years, you change it not or a little, and you totally optimize there everything AI driven. And it AI driven is then real the value, and maybe you change immediately not only your cost, the cost is peanuts. Peter Drucker was prophetizing already that every knowledge worker, what he prophesized in last century, could be double in productivity. That means half of the people, the labor is 60% or 70% of an enterprise. And if it is half, then maybe from 90%, say you have a company with 10% EBITDA, $100 million revenue, $90 million cost. Half of the cost, people related, could go to the EBITDA. In tomorrow's world, you will see a tremendous change in increasing EBITDA from technology if we do it right. Because we are not only reducing costs, we increasing revenue, but we have a multiple also from market cap. No one is forgetting that. And this market cap, we give it to the NVIDIAs, we give it to Apple, we give it to Oracle in this part, then it should be stupid. And it is our knowledge. And our knowledge is always, again, stolen, etc.
Right. No, that's really well said. And, one thing we were touching on as well is the leadership side of thing. I think a couple of you mentioned Emma, and one other person I think mentioned leadership sort of in passing, but I want to come back to that and dig in a little bit. And I'll start with you, Casey, on this point. But when you're consulting the clients in supply chain management, how do leaders typically respond and get involved in these sorts of change initiatives versus how you would expect them to be or how they should be getting involved? What do you see there?
Yeah, it's funny because oftentimes I'm called in for what leadership sees as a problem. That's not actually the problem within the organization. They most of the time it boils back to it being a leadership issue. They're the ones not willing to change. They're the ones not willing to actually spot what the actual issues within the organization are. And much to some of the other points that have been made, everyone wants a quick fix, right? So leadership is always pushing, like, how fast can we get this done? What's the cheapest cost we can get this done? What's the silver bullet? And I think companies and their leadership teams need to really take that time, as someone else had pointed out, on the front end of identifying what is the root cause that we're trying to solve here. What are the actual problems within our supply chain? Realize what are the solutions that actually match those problems, and how can we build a roadmap to take those steps from A to Z without skipping all of the letters and just going from A to Z. I mean, I always use the joke about how, I'll have people asking me, they want to go from Excel spreadsheets to, robots like overnight. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. You can't really get there. So I think from a leadership perspective, it's really diving into what is actually going on within your organization, looking at, your leadership styles as well, and saying, hey, are we promoting, back to the people side of it, right? Are we promoting a culture that looks for these gaps, looks for these problems, and has our, teams and resources bringing them to light so we can actually make meaningful change? But it's really, I often get to where I'm like, now this is a leadership issue. It's not a process issue. It's a leadership issue. So
yeah. Well, and of course, when you've got a client, being a fellow consultant as well, you've got to be careful not to call the baby ugly too much. You've got to tread lightly, especially when you're building a new relationship. But it is oftentimes, I agree with you, it oftentimes is a leadership issue. And Emma, I know you've been super outspoken about this on TikTok and LinkedIn and elsewhere, but what are your thoughts? I'm sure you have some strong opinions here.
Yeah. I mean, the experience that I had going into organizations is very similar. When you sit down and it's like the refusal to look in the mirror and recognize that you're the problem. And I don't want to always point that, like, this is not me saying that there aren't people within organizations that are difficult to move and difficult to change, or that there won't be technology issues that come up as you're trying to implement a solution that cause headache and issue. But time and time again, the feedback that I get is that, we can't figure out why we're doing certain things, or, the idea that leadership comes out and thinks that it's this huge flex to tell their shareholders that they're going AI first. That tells every single one of your customers and every single one of your employees that you're putting technology over the top of them. And then, like, you look at some of these statements even further into the way that they're managing it and talking about specifically eliminating staff, specifically reducing contractors, starting to have it be a part of the way that people are evaluated. Never did we ever put in somebody's evaluation, did you use RPA effectively? But why is that suddenly something we're going to measure people on when we've decided that we should go AI first? But you also can't articulate to me what kind of outcome you're looking to accomplish other than reducing developers or reducing additional contractors. Like, when we start to do that, we've lost the plot. The plot of technology is supposed to be to help us solve bigger problems, focus human attention and human energy on the things that we enjoy doing, the things that challenge us, the things that use the skills that we can't automate, like critical thinking and creativity and the human-to-human relationships, like the empathy that was mentioned in the chat earlier. And we've been chasing that carrot of being able to get us to the human work for a very long time. And what we've done with this approach is create more complexity, create higher work demands for the people that are in the center of trying to go out and interact with these 15 different platforms that they need to make a decision. And we're just creating that problem now on hyperspeed if you start bringing in AI to keep going against your bad processes and not looking at how you're looking to solve that problem. And so I just, like, want people to stop and take a deep breath and, like, think about what you're trying to accomplish as a company. When Yum Brands, who owns Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, came out and said that they want to be AI first. Guess what? I don't want a taco that's AI. I want a taco that tastes good. I want a pizza that tastes good. I don't want you to be AI first. Use the tool. That's great. Use it to make your people more efficient or automate certain processes or avoid injury for humans. All of that stuff is great. But I want you to be focused on like what your mission as an organization should be. And so like that piece of like chasing the technology and chasing that at all costs rather than thinking about the why behind things is just like, it feels so simple. It feels so simple to say to a leader to like stop and think for a second and tell me what you want your company to be. But when you ask that question, it's like, we want to be the Amazon of our industry. Well, what the hell does that mean? Like, stop and tell me what you want to do as a company and then enable it with technology and the people that are alongside you, because otherwise you're just not going to get there.
What's interesting is it is the way you're describing it, the way it should be, the way you guys have both just described this that's the easier way. I mean, that's the irony of it all is it's like, that's actually easier to do. It should be easier to do than saying, well, we want to be AI first. In the case of Yum Brands should be saying we want to be customer centric, customer focused. What can we do to make it a better experience for our customers? And then sure, it's probably going to involve AI to some degree, but at least then you've got that clarity. But if you just say AI first, people get lost. Like, well, what is, to your point, what the hell does that mean? AI can do a million different things. I don't need it to do a million different things. I need it to do these 10 things to provide a better customer experience or whatever.
Well, and then you look at the companies that are like in that, specifically the announcement that they said from Yum Brands, like, we're coming out, we're AI first. They were like, great, give us an example of what that means. They're like, instead of having employees read a manual to figure out what temperature they should set the oven at, we're going to create a generative AI solution that they can ask what temperature they should set the oven to. It's like that. There's probably some other use cases that you could use it with, but like now you're just desperate to find a spot to put AI where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think.
What is AI?
Oh, go ahead.
If you look, what is AI? We're misleading, and it's all nonsense. Because what are we really doing on this moment? Zero, and we're talking tremendous. AI could be great, like if I have a horse or I have a big car, or if I can fly in. Can change, but only when it is a component in my job to be done. Yep. And AI should never be executed without a human. And what is AI doing? It's my butler. Now, if I have smart butlers, I can do it. We see now on the front end in customer intimacy elements and what you do with included AI, then the knowledge worker is doing 5 times better. But it is still propelling to the knowledge worker. The good ones are doing better, and the bad ones have nonsense. And there's only a few good ones who understand it. And most, if you see, on this moment, there's zero ROI, it's very low ROI on AI on this moment, because we are in infancy. But don't underestimate it. That's the opposite. That means the young kids who can learn it a little, but should always be part of the business. And it should be part of your workflow. And then the AI is then even hidden, like a lot of stuff is hidden here for me. There's a lot in. I can say, okay, I don't need this stuff. I can do it without. That's nonsense. That will not work. But on the other hand, if I can use it, I can do my job 3 times better. And there is tremendous win, especially downstream, suppose in the procure to pay, in all those elements where we have simple workflow elements. We can win a lot, all those stuff in combination with invoicing, these procuring elements. We can, in 5 minutes, I can see a lot. Now, if I adopt this one, and that's what we do here now, then we can improve tremendous. But then, can you give it even to a ROI to a customer? The only element should be EBITDA for the customer. And we should do it with customer intimacy. The first, and the problem is we do nothing with customer intimacy. All these vendors saying, what's in for me? They're swimming, they're sinking, they're swimming like this one. There is lack of customer intimacy. Right. That's the biggest problem, because there is no ROI, it takes too long. We need only ROI for tomorrow, but not continuously what are we doing in 5-10 years therein.
Right. And those are great points, and the audience is coming in with some great points as well. Drew on LinkedIn says, if we don't understand the why, whatever the thing is up for redesign. So the why is understood. So that's a great point, Drew. Thanks for that. And then Chris on LinkedIn says, leaders and companies need to have a clear vision on what technology, AI, and employees can do to improve productivity, whether it's the customer experience or that North Star, whatever that North Star is that you're trying to accomplish is super important. And Will, since we're going to lose you here in a minute, I want to ask you, make sure you have a chance to comment here before you have to drop off for a pre-existing commitment. I want to ask you a question around assessing and prioritizing process improvements before choosing technologies. How do you recommend in general when you're assessing a client's operations and let's say they come to you with a problem statement of, we need to replace our crappy system, and you ask them why, and they say because it sucks. And how do you get beyond that to more of a, hey, let's look at your processes and understand what your needs are and give you that North Star before you start throwing technology at the problem? How do you navigate that with your clients?
Sure. Well, what I like to do is boots on the ground. I like to, put myself in their facility and then talk to all the people. What happens during receiving? What happens during put away? What happens during quality? What is your slotting strategy? What does pick, pack, and ship look like? And is the technology the issue, or is it process the issue? Is it space the issue? Is it not enough? Is it the storage meeting? Whatever it is, and really take a look at root cause analysis and to determine really, because if you look about like artificial intelligence, it's a tool. It's no different than a forklift, right? Can I move more equipment around the warehouse with a forklift? Sure. But if I don't understand how to use it, if you just say, hey, go jump on that forklift and move some stuff around, you might not have rack standing anymore, right? So same thing with AI. Is there a purpose for it? Do I understand how to use it, how to deploy it, and what the purpose is? A lot of CEOs are just looking at that and salivating and saying, oh, how many people can I fire and get rid of, and how much? Because that's the new way to run businesses. We just can a bunch of people. You hear that Yum Brands, talking about, we're an AI first strategy. They're not talking to their customer base. They're talking to shareholders and analysts, and it might give you a short time boost. But if it's not deployed properly, if people don't use it, it doesn't end up in results and good customer service, it's not going to work anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were describing that Yum Brands case study, Emma, I was imagining a bunch of like 26-year-old Harvard MBAs from McKinsey or Deloitte or something like that coming in and doing their big presentation of how, imagine if you use generative AI to control or to figure out what temperature they should be cooking. And all these executives getting so excited about how cool that would be and totally losing sight of what the point is.
The best part of that though is, and I was going to say this earlier, is how, in my head, I'm sitting here like, well, what about the rest of their supply chain processes that I'm sure have 9,000 different systems that aren't, conveying the right data or the right information? Is their data quality even sound in that side of things? What's their procurement contracts like, right? And I'm like, oh, but let's leverage AI to, change the temperature on an oven. That makes sense for that.
Right.
And to what the point was made earlier, you can't ignore the technology that is developing. Right. You have to stay up to date with it, and you need to focus on where you have opportunity.
Right.
But the problem for me that like I keep coming back to, and Eric, I've got all sorts of stories about this AI first thing. This is like on number one on my hit list right now because I am so frustrated with it. But like you look at Duolingo, big app that made big news by coming out and being AI first, and specifically said that they want to reduce contractors. Or you've got like the Microsofts of the world laying off people and then going and, opening up jobs overseas, but saying that it's because of AI and they're so efficient. This talking out of both sides of your mouth from the companies that are creating the AI solutions that are then going to sell those AI solutions, like the CEO of Salesforce. We're not hiring engineers anymore. We're so efficient. We have 650 engineer jobs open on our website for anybody that goes to care to look. So like that talking out of both sides of your mouth doesn't help the perception of the technology. It doesn't encourage people that are working in your business to learn more about it. It breeds a sense of fear that the technology is going to come in and replace them, as opposed to saying to them, hey, this is something that's coming that we should spend time learning about. And then when you watch these software companies look at hiring new talent that has specific skills and lay off old talent as opposed to upskilling the talent so that we have a workforce that's actually prepared for what's coming and can help implement these technologies, it's like why are we creating the world that we don't want to live in? Is it for the shareholders and like positioning ourselves for analysts? That seems to be the best option in terms of like the way that my brain works, because it just doesn't feel like a sustainable model when you look at projections of where the jobs are going to be and the gaps that we have for skill sets that are coming. We need to be preparing the people that are in our companies to help us with all of this. And going back to what you said, Eric, that's the easy way to do it. If you spend a fraction of what you would spend on failed AI pilots on upskilling your team to get them to understand the technology and find the right problems to solve, you get to implement it. You get to be an AI company. You get all of the benefits that you're chasing with this other approach, but then you've got a workforce that's ready and a model that's going to work.
Yeah. Well, and you're highlighting a problem with the industry, Emma, with that you and I run up against often, being agnostic and independent and not affiliated with software vendors, is the technology space is a big echo chamber. It's a big echo chamber of how awesome AI is and all the great stuff it can do. The vendors are out there pushing it. They're actually wanting the vendor lock that Jan is saying is so healthy. They want vendor lock because that helps them. So of course they want you to use their AI tools and all that stuff. And then you get Gartner and all the industry analysts who are paid by the software vendors who are out there saying the same thing. So as a buyer, you start thinking AI. I mean, all the consultants, all the analysts, all the vendors are all saying that AI first is sort of the way to go. So let's really lean into that. And I think, if you really step back and say, what if you did nothing with your technology? Just crazy idea. I know it's crazy talk. What if you just kept your old system and made some more incremental changes, upskilled your people, put in some point solutions that solve a problem, maybe put in some agentic AI that can, patch up some of the old data issue or old systems issues. Is that the end of the world? I mean, that you get crazy looks from software vendors who say, no, then what about your technical debt? Or, you're going to fall behind if you don't do this now. And so it creates this panic and fear. And anyway, so I think we just have to look past the hype in the echo chamber to really look.
Yeah, but don't underestimate the value, but there's a big way to go. But if you have end-to-end all your data, and if I see in 5 minutes already what Eli Goldratt mentioned, the constraints and the business, but it's a combination, is a business element using skills. And then you have to understand that this AI stuff, but I can combine with great stuff, but have to do with all the data together, with all this old legacy together. We need these old people who understand ERP. Otherwise, you can forget and you do AI without the whole ERP data. It's 90% of the data in the beginning. It starts with ERP. You have all this data. And when this data is isolated and these young kids are doing some things on the, say, front end, it should be united. But I should say, don't underestimate the change what it will bring. That means the next couple of years, and it does not mean that you have to lay off people. Maybe you have to increase and invest in people and in combinations of people, because you need the whole team. You cannot do it to pick up only a few elements and focus on this one, in my opinion. You have to do it for all your processes.
Eric, I do need to run. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Great. Nice to
yeah, we'll
see you.
We'll see you in Denver next month.
And you can find me on LinkedIn or at thedistributionguy.com. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Will.
Bye.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Will. That was great. And I want to get to a couple questions here. This is a funny one from Tom on LinkedIn. Tom says, importantly, I don't believe I caught Jan's take on the best decade in music. And he is correct. I forgot to ask you that, Jan. What is your favorite?
No problem. I'm old. I'm going back to 80, but I go to the 18th century. And the best music for me is Bach.
Oh, okay.
It's so amazing. If you see a Messiah or anywhere, it is the most amazing stuff. hundreds of years old, and still people cannot understand the brilliant elements in those classical musics. That means my love is a beautiful concert and seeing that. But then later on, I go into the 80s.
No, that's very cool. So you're going way back, but old school. But what you're saying is you're old school like me.
I'm old school.
Just even more old school than me.
Yeah, even more. Yeah.
So here's a two-part question. I want to maybe just sort of bring this all full circle and wrap up, and I'll just open up to the general panel here, and whoever wants to answer these two questions, I'll combine them into one. One is from Sam on LinkedIn. He says, "Is there danger that AI will just allow us to do the wrong things more efficiently?" And then Zay on LinkedIn says, what do you understand should be the preparation of human and cultural perspective to facilitate every company to move to AI first? So I'll just open up to general conversation here.
I think from my perspective, yes, and I see this all the time. Like, I work with a lot of very small businesses. So I'm not really on the enterprise side, which is where I've had experience with these types of initiatives in the past, but working with small businesses, and they want to leverage, AI to do different things for them from either a cost constraint perspective, a resource constraint perspective, which are valid things. But when you stop to actually look at what's going on in their organization, they're not foundationally correct. And so what they're asking me to do is to go in and try to take, processes or operations and make them faster that aren't even correct. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Then in 5-6 years, when you scale and when you grow, we're going to be back to the same conversation, if not way sooner. And so, it's from a small business perspective, it's getting the foundation correct first before trying to actually, go the route of leveraging some of these tools and technologies, because yes, you will just accelerate the bad. It's garbage in, garbage out. You'll just accelerate the bad. And I would say from the perspective of going AI first within organizations, I think that kind of starts with a leadership perspective, and how leaders are actually communicating and talking about, these new tools and technologies. To an education standpoint, I see this in academia quite a bit. Making sure that we're giving the actual tools, again, the people side, to the workforce so they are enabled to actually go out, whether it's at this company, the next company they go to, or the workforce in general. But I think also it's enabling to actually spot the bad. I think a lot of companies want to cover that up. And then they don't give their employees the opportunity to find the gaps and find the problems and bring them to the table and discuss them. They just want to kind of cover it up and say, no, we've got the fancy shiny, we're doing great. And I think we need to kind of level set with that and go, no, we all have gaps and inefficiencies in our organizations. They're all throughout, no matter what technology you're using. So I would say that's kind of, and again, I focus more on small businesses, so it's a little more complex with enterprise, but from definitely a small business perspective, it's get the foundation right, educate your folks, make sure that you are starting off with a culture that's open to these things. So then as you grow and scale, you're prepared to actually be a little more agile and adaptive to the new way and new and innovative way of doing things, I would say.
But you have the future. The business is going to small business more and more, to downstream. Enterprises are over. There's no reason to have 200,000 people together. We can be all these infrastructure elements in the APIs, etc. We can, and you see more, the value is going more downstream. And there is where you have the people, and there is where you're doing it. But that means you should focus on smart business. Bring elements together, have a good understanding there, and all those components can help you. Even can help you if you speak good languages and can communicate. But it's all different elements in smart business, and it depends then to your kind of business what makes sense. Now, a lot of stuff who are going downstream will be automated. All these transactions should be free in all those elements. In the past, it costs a lot of money, but now we see all the stuff are becoming automated. But the question is then, okay, how are you collaborate with all this stuff? And how are you dealing then and selling, etc., and do with this one? And then the technology, doesn't matter what type of, all those technology still can help us a lot. But the perfect is the enemy of the good. Because everything always should be the end element is always a handicraft way of doing. And to the last optimization, lucky-wise, always seems a human who optimizes it. But when I'm better informed, I can win the deal. Therefore, we should not ignore the opportunity with this new technology, but it's not a be all and end all of it. It's only a component of the whole package.
Right, right. So Emma, what are your closing thoughts on that whole thread of how to navigate this whole thread?
I think it goes back to something Casey just said about the idea of like giving your team the opportunity to bring forward where they see challenges. And whether it is to focus on what the board is telling them to do or their shareholders are doing, there seems to be a little bit of arrogance, I'm sorry, to a lot of the people that are sitting in the leadership seats thinking that they know best. And I've actually had conversations with like C-suite executives in very large companies that have told me like, yeah, that's great to think that we can like ask our team what they want. And like direct quote, but they would just ask for a faster horse instead of a car. And to me, if that's genuinely what's happening in your organization, then you have failed as a leader in developing your team and giving them the skill sets that they need to spot opportunity. And if you are a good leader who focuses on that education and upskilling and giving your team the resources that they need, those resources span more than just the technology solution that you implement into the company. And if you can take this piece of the people side and listen to what they have to say about the process and where you have opportunities, and then you implement the technology, that's where like the magic that we all hear about comes from. But that magic doesn't come from an easy button. It comes from doing the work that everybody will tell you you need to do. And you don't get to take shortcuts because you're brilliant or you're smart or you know better than your team. You have to move through that process. And it's something that we've been talking about for longer than I've been in the industry. And if you do that, then you will get the results that you're looking for in some of the cases, because other times you're going to try something and it's going to be an experiment and it's going to fail and you're going to have to pivot and change and move in a new direction. But if you skip that, you're never going to be successful. And so I just come back to this time and time again. It sounds so simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. You still have to move through the steps. Just the same way that like someone can give you a workout plan and tell you that you're going to get like ripped and be super in shape. You still have to do the plan. You still have to move through the steps. And that means you still have to run a mile before you can run 5. And right. You still have to lift 5 pounds before you can lift 20. You have to do that stuff, whether it's AI or any other tool that you're bringing into your company.
Yeah, really well said. So a quick closing question for you all. I'll ask each of you the same. Well, I'll start with you, Emma. But what are you most looking forward to at Stratosphere? You've been there before. You're coming back again. What do you?
We have a three-peat. I'm excited actually to see both of you guys speak. Jana, I missed your presentation last year. I had to fly out, so I did not get to be there for the fire alarm extravaganza. But I'm looking forward to. I honestly learn so much every time that I come and I sit down. You do a really nice job of bringing speakers with different vantage points, kind of across the board. And so I really love the opportunity to learn from everybody else that's there.
Yeah, great. And then how about you, Jan? What are you most looking forward to at Stratosphere?
To collaborate and to partnering. There's a tremendous opportunity to stay strong with all the big giants, because there are smart people together who can collaborate, who can unite, who have money, can make money together. We have to do it together and learn from each other. And there is on one floor so much knowledge, what we have, use it. And that's unique. Therefore, it's also interesting to come and to see people and to meet, but real to see what can we do for each other. Right. And I learned there, this only you as Americans most times saying, okay, synergy and 1 and 1 is 3, and I like to have 2 and I give you 1, and then we fighting. Now I learned something different. If you deal 1 and 1 can be 11, 2 ones.
Yeah.
And suppose, Eric, suppose I care for you, not knowing that you care for me. And if I care a lot for you, and you do a little for me, maybe I have only 3 or 4, but still more than 1, and you have 7.
Right.
Collaboration and working together and then with an element that we can trust each other. So that even people, if you do, that we care for each other and there is so much to win, especially with all those people are coming together, they represent the whole world in one floor. With maybe that could be the most attractive ones to see what can I do for you? Is there something here? How can we share some things? Because the business will be a collaborative business. And it's not here only an enterprise, because enterprise, there's nothing, they're coming, going, and they're only market cap, there's no humans, you cannot talk to no one. The business is humans who are doing it and doing it together. And that's what I really like very much.
Yeah.
Looking forward.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun, and you're going to have the distinct honor of being the one that's going to travel the furthest as far as the speaking group. You'll be the one coming all the way from Europe. So thanks for joining. Looking forward to it. And how about you, Casey? You've never been. This is your first time presenting at Stratosphere. What do you expect? Do you know what to expect, or what are you excited about?
Well, so last year I was actually supposed to speak, and then we got hit by Hurricane Helene, and I was not able to actually travel because we had no power. So I'm excited to come this year. I'm looking forward to all the brilliant minds coming together. And, it's cool to see on panels like this how we all kind of think very similarly, which is great. In the business world, I've learned that going with the flow is sometimes not always the best thing to do. So I love having folks who think, of going a different way and trying new things and being innovative together. So looking forward to just getting all these brilliant minds together and seeing what we can talk about and innovate and come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is half the fun, is just, I learned so much from these two, even just doing today's panel. I learned a ton from you guys, and there's going to be a dozen or so other speakers that weren't on the panel here today. So there's a lot we can all learn. So really appreciate you guys being here today. And if you're interested in learning more about Stratosphere, scan the QR code right here. You can also go to stratosphere2025.com. You can see the speaker lineup. You can also see the pricing for different packages. If you want to join in person or if you want to join remotely, you can do that as well. And use the discount code EARLYBIRD if you would like to save 20% on that registration fee. So hope to see you all there. Thank you to the three of you and to Will again for being here today. Really appreciate it. And as always, I had a lot of fun. So thank you.
Looking forward.
And thank you to the audience for being here. We'll see you next time. We do these live discussions every Tuesday, same time, same place. Wherever you're listening or watching, we'll be here again next week. So hope you have a great